Hello everyone, I'm Chris Barrett, Content Director for Access All Areas. Thank you very much for joining us. I've just got one little issue before I introduce the panel, or they introduce themselves, is that Luke is very eager and very keen and on his way. Luke from co-founder and creative director of Boomtown. He's parking his car, I hear, currently, and he's going to run up here. So hopefully he'll leap heroically onto the stage mid-session. We might be able to kind of extend it a little bit at the end with a kind of one-on-one with him. But I know that we have got a great panel here and everyone's got a lot of things to do. So Ray is going to have to rush off at sort of 12. So we'll let him go at 12. If Luke turns up a bit later, we'll drill into Boomtown, as it were, at the end. I'd love to give you all a sort of an opportunity to introduce yourselves, really, so you can kind of add a little bit of context as to kind of your role and what you do. So if we just start off with you, Ray, if you can just talk through, obviously you're CEO of STUFISH, which has done many wonderful things that I've seen and looked on enviously and would have loved to have been involved in. But lots of impressive things across the live events ecosystem. Are there mics on?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sorry.
Okay,
it's
cool.
On.
Testing.
1,
2, 3. So go, Ray. Yeah, if you could just introduce yourself, please.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I'm Ray Winkler, architect and CEO and design director of STUFISH Entertainment Architects. For those who don't know what that means, I think it's bluntly put, we put rock and roll into architecture and architecture into rock and roll. So we design a lot of events, a lot of design stages, but also theatres and permanent and semi-permanent building. That's me.
Brilliant stuff, thank you. And Mandy, for anyone that doesn't know what Superstruct is, which I believe is the second biggest festival promoter in the world, is that not correct?
Depends who you speak to, but yeah, it is correct.
Excellent. Well, yeah, if you can just talk us through a little bit about your UK MD, so we can talk.
Yeah, I'm the MD of Superstruct UK. Superstruct is a global business. So we're a network, UK specifically, we're a network of festival businesses. We've got, I want to say 14 festivals in the group. Superstruct itself is I suppose the best way to describe it, a support system of specialist expertise that work with the festivals in the network to support them in terms of operational, creative and commercial optimization.
Thank you. Brilliant stuff. And okay, and Sarah, can you just talk us through, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows what Goodwood Revival is, you're the general manager of that. They can piece it together a little bit, but if you can give us a bit of an overview of your role there and what you're...
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I look after the Revival event at Goodwood, which is also known for Festival of Speed and also its horse racing events. So we're one of those events that falls on that estate. And the Revival is a 3-day motorsport event, 50,000 people per day, and it is also an immersive celebration of sort of that 1948 to 1966 culture. So really immersive, lots of creativity, so lots of things we can get into today we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm aware that I could almost talk to you guys all day and be very, very entertained and interested myself, but there's a lot to get through in a short amount of time. But Mandy, let's start with you really, and I wanted to kind of drill into something that's come up on panels that I've chaired and been involved in and watched and conversations I've had, which is really that there's across Europe, there's a focus among festival operators in increasing the focus on creativity, the wider, all-encompassing event experience, as opposed to drilling, or as opposed to kind of investing maybe so much money just in the headline talent. So it'd be interesting to hear whether that is correct from your experience in the UK and what you're seeing of Superstruct festivals across Europe, and if that is the case, kind of how that's kind of being manifested and kind of why that's happening. Is that happening as a direct result of the dominance of certain other promoters or the inflation in artist fees?
So it's probably a bit of both. I think, speaking from personal experience, we have had to meet a challenge, which is, diverse audiences now coming to festivals that are looking for experiences that go beyond music. The challenge to get talent, the competition for talent and the level of fees, And the need to therefore find ways to create a consistent, for want of a better phrase, product that your community can trust in and will engage with. So there's always a lot of talk about, woe is us, we can't get the right artists, but actually, that challenge has meant, I think, that a lot of us in the industry have focused massively on experience, both creative experience as well as operational experience, so comfort. With the diversity of audiences, a lot of audiences are now looking for their basic comforts to be met beyond, terrible portaloos and muddy fields. So the general premiumization and the creative thought that needs to go in that, as well as amazing creativity, has really come out of changing audience demands as well as competition for artists, I would say, from my perspective.
Thank you. And Luke, Boomtown's synonymous really with storytelling and creating this kind of immersive environment. And obviously, as part of that, people will go there with an expectation of being transported to a certain degree into this other world, and I guess what I'm coming to is how does that, with an event that's already got that very much entrenched sort of experiential kind of reputation, has the balance shifted at all between the money spent on artists and the money spent on the creativity? Or have you always kind of stuck with the same kind of balance? Because I think a few years ago there was talk anyway of spreading the money at least spent on artists out a little bit more, so there's more support for the grassroots and the lesser established artists.
Yeah. Well, we've always led with the creativity kind of over the artists, really. I would say, and that's really served us really well. I think people come to the festival because of the artistic identity and the way that we kind of express through that creativity. We're in a unique position, really. Our music genres are really diverse, so we're not kind of pigeonholed into a certain genre. So that gives us a lot more flexibility of getting the lineups we want. And I mean, generally we've managed, and I don't really know how we've managed it, to be honest, but I mean, we've managed to keep our highest kind of headliner spend has been really quite low. I mean, it's generally about 100 grand is our kind of top max that we go on a headliner, which is pretty amazing considering the scale of the festival. So it's always a gamble. I think, trying to find that balance is always a gamble, and I don't think we'll ever quite figure it out, but we're in a good place at the moment.
You've just sold out, my understanding, in the last week or so, is that right? So how does that compare, just as an interest, how does that compare year on year in terms of the speed at which the event's sold out?
It depends on the show. We've gone up by 10,000 as well, so to sell out in February is really good. I just think we've just managed to really understand our identity as an organisation, who we are, how we tell our stories to the audience, and how our audience really feel like they are really part of the show. They're part of the brand. They're part of the festival, and so we get a lot of returners coming as well. It feels really good, but we're in a good place at the moment, and you could easily have a wet year and then it sort of dips down or whatever. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
Good to hear. Great. I mean, Goodwood is, it's one of my favourite events. It's just absolutely, a stunning location. But going into that back to the sort of immersive environment that you create there, the level of attention is just remarkable across absolutely every kind of corner of the event, down to the police and emergency services, in retro vehicles and uniforms and everything else, to even the loos, let alone all the beautiful cars and vehicle, planes and everyone dressed up, to the point where if you walk around and someone isn't fully dressed up, you kind of feel a bit, frustrated by them, but they're very much in the minority. I'm just interested to hear kind of how you kind of, coming out of, obviously we talked about this earlier on, it's an ongoing conversation, but production costs have gone up an awful lot in recent years, particularly since the pandemic. How challenging is it to maintain that level of attention to detail when it comes to creating that Goodwood environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's super challenging. As you say, costs have gone up significantly, and our attention to detail is key to the event, and it's what people come back for. They look forward to seeing what new things we've come up with. I mean, we're really fortunate in that being the venue and the promoter, we've got a lot of opportunity for storage on site, so recirculating our stock and reusing it and storing it year on year. That's really key, and that just means that we've got more money to invest in than the new stuff. So that we can have a little bit of fun with certain things, and there's ways of sort of sustaining that as well, and you know, bonkers ideas like we're going to create a UFO that somebody's going to think that's amazing and weird and fun, but then we're never going to be able to reuse that again, right? Because that's super niche. But being able to sell that for charity, and then again that sort of sustainability message throughout. So that's something that we definitely look to do. But I think to Luke's point of making sure that you have a really clear identity and what it is that you're trying to achieve. We're very clear on our dates and our timelines, you know, the period of time that we're looking at, and it allows us to be really strict. Like, would that thing have been there in that time period? And if it wouldn't have been, then we won't do it. So we're quite clear about what it is we will and won't do. And then thinking of really creative ways, I guess, to, if we need that thing there, how are we going to do it? So no, you're not going to just drive around in a modern vehicle. We're going to find you an old one, and it's going to be really difficult to do that. It's going to be much more work for us and our team, but ultimately it's going to give a way better customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray, obviously, you know, you've been involved in some incredible projects, from, you know, stage designs for the Rolling Stones, U2, Beyoncé, Adele. I mean, that huge bespoke Munich, you know, residency that she did there with, I don't know, I think it's something like 73,000 capacity, huge screens that were created there. I mean, you were involved in the, I don't want to do the whole list, but some really remarkable projects in the design of the ABBA Arena, all sorts of things. What trends are you seeing in terms of, you know, creativity in production at the top end there? Because, you know, obviously everyone knows what's going on with stadium shows. It's been absolutely remarkable. In Wembley Stadium, we've got 30 gigs in there this year. I mean, it is basically turned from a football venue to a music venue, really. You know, we're seeing a lot. You know, so I'm just wondering, with that level of ticket price, with that level of focus on production, you know, those artists coming out and doing those enormous shows, what pressures is that putting on creativity in terms of artists wanting to potentially kind of outdo each other, or, you know, what are the kind of biggest trends that you're seeing at that top end?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the artists are in an arms race when it comes to outdoing their competitors. And so things are getting bigger and brighter, not necessarily cheaper. But I think what everybody's looking for is a unique identity and a unique experience that pertains to the artist itself. And in order to achieve that is quite a challenge, because all of the artists that we work with, in fact, have the same set of toys. They all play in the same sandbox, and they all have the same amount of shovels and buckets and that creates these shows. So for us as entertainment architects, is trying to put these together and understand what it is that the artist wants to achieve out of this event and what sort of story they want to tell. So we are an important but small part of a very large network of people who contribute towards the success of these. So, you know, Adele's 6,000 square meter of video screens is 6,000 meter of video screens that could have gone horrifically wrong because they wouldn't have told the story. But with the creative crew that we were working with, Kim Gavin and Matt Askham and everybody else that was involved with it, it became her extension, it became her cloak, it became her environment that was very bespoke to her. And what we do at our end of the thing, because everything is ephemeral, is we don't create anything that is physically lasting. The only thing that people take away is a memory. So we're in the business of building memories for these people, and these are hopefully good memories, and it's a very powerful association between an event and the music that it represents. So people remember these things probably for the rest of their life, long before the events have disappeared and are never to be seen again, because we very rarely repeat ourselves.
And how important is the evolution of technology in terms of how important is that part of the whole kind of creative realizations, if you like? So I'm just sort of thinking about, you know, Adele's staging production there was huge screens. Obviously, that wouldn't have been possible 10 years, 15 years
Yeah.
ago. Much lighter, much high definition, raw and expensive to do. What kind of trends are you seeing? What kind of, in what new technology coming down the line do you think is kind of really elevating the potential for creative productions?
I mean, for that I would need a crystal ball, and I left that at home. But I mean, it's fair to say, or ask yourself the question, you know, would Shakespeare have written better if he had a typewriter or a MS Word? I don't think so. So the important in all of the thing is that technology remains subservient to the story that we want to tell, or else it just becomes the dominant force, which it often is. And you know, you just have to walk around here. You are bombarded with things that are amazing, but on their own are completely meaningless, utterly meaningless. And so for us, you know, our mantra is always, don't let the technology drive the narrative. Let the narrative choose the technology that is right. And, you know, if you took Adele's Munich stage, we came to the conclusion very quickly because of some very practical circumstances. You know, you have 80,000 people on what was a disused car park or a disused exhibition space, and there's a single artist that at times was more than 100 meters away from her band and needed to entertain 80,000 people in an environment that would make them feel like she was talking to each of them personally. And using technology or video technology in these circumstances is a no-brainer. How to use it is where our expertise comes in, and that's where the joy of creation comes along, because amongst the creative team that I mentioned earlier, everybody has a different viewpoint and a different angle, but in the end it all converges into singularity that then becomes this most amazing experience for 80,000 people who'll be standing, you know, in the middle of the field on a wet Wednesday or Friday evening and still walk away with the most memorable experience that they had in a very long time, to which technology was absolutely instrumental, but not the lead.
Okay, I wanted to kind of touch on the balance between, you know, bringing these wonderful worlds to life, if you like, these creative worlds to life, also sustainability. I mean, Ray, I could stay with you for a minute on this. Obviously, you've been doing projects with, you know, bamboo. You've also kind of, there's also that, I suppose, the side of things when you look at something like a kind of ABBA arena as opposed to kind of a permanent space. I mean, obviously those are demountable structures that can then be moved. That ABBA arena can then be placed in Stockholm or somewhere else. So, you know, those quite significant sustainable initiatives. How core is that, and how much of an ongoing consideration is that for you in the projects that you're working on?
Well, personally, from a personal perspective, it's hugely important to me. I think the day and age of sheer hedonism at any cost, I think, are over. I think we all have a collective responsibility towards a sustainable future for all of us. You know, it's a pretty hard thing to achieve because there are so many factors that influence the net value of how sustainable something is. And I'm by no means an expert, but you can offset the argument where you say, well, you know, 90% of what we did for the Rolling Stones ended up in a U2 show and then ended up in a Robbie Williams show because it's all rental stock. That is true. What is more difficult to argue is how one can justify 100 trucks delivering this to the show. And then, of course, the biggest impact on the sustainability factor is actually the audience traveling there. So if you have, I don't know, 60,000 people turning up, less so in Europe, but more so in the States, and they all, that is potentially 30,000 cars. In Munich for Adele, we flipped the argument around and said, well, this is now a residency, and people, although they will come to us, there is no parking space available. People could not come by car, and the city of Munich made the cost of traveling to and from the event as part of the ticket on the metro system. So people were forced to come on the metro system. There's a huge amount still to do. We experimented with bamboo in our last show that we did for Global Citizen in Brazil as part of the COP sustainability conference, which itself is a little bit of a oxymoron, but we use bamboo as cladding, which, for those who don't know, but it's a widely available species of grass. It grows incredibly quickly. In 4 years, you can grow 30 meter tall strands of bamboo that's very, very strong. It sequesters CO2 incredibly quickly, and it's immediately replenishable. And although in Brazil they grow 80 species of bamboo, when we approached the organizers to use bamboo, they looked at us blankly and didn't even realize that they had it growing in their backyard. And so I think it's important that we incrementally educate ourselves, educate our clients, and educate our audiences as to what are the possibilities. And not a single entity can solve that problem. We all have to do that together, and do it in a way that it doesn't become, as one preaches it, one has to practice it, but also don't want to become something where it becomes a killjoy, because I do think one doesn't exclude the other. You can still have the most amazing experience with that sustainability aspect in the back of your mind.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, obviously, you're essentially running a motor racing event, with fossil fuels. So there is that side of things. But I mean, having been there, clearly there's a lot that you've done in recent years, or maybe for longer than my experience of going there. But certainly, the whole kind of sustainability consideration seems to be kind of imbued in the presentation and what you're doing there. So there's been a lot of creative initiatives, obviously, in terms of bringing sustainability and reuse to the fore. Can you just talk us through kind of how that has played a big part in your creative approach to the event?
Yeah, sure. So, no getting away from the fact that we are a motorsport event, and that brings with it its sustainability challenges. We made this shift 2 years ago to move to sustainable fuels across all of our motor racing itself, which was quite a big shift for historic racing. It's the first for the industry for us to move to sustainable fuels, and took a bit of convincing, but so that was key for us. Ultimately, the cars that are racing around the track are, from the 40s to 60s. They are lovingly restored. They're taken very good care of. They are literally the epitome of what is sustainable. They're not brand new. They're not off the factory. They're being tinkered with and loved and restored. So that's quite a key takeaway. And as we've sort of seen the shift for sustainability across our culture, I think we've sort of moved with that in the event. And actually, it sort of underpins everything we're doing at Revival anyway, but it's just kind of bringing it to the fore. Everybody that comes to the event, everyone's wearing vintage clothes. And everyone, if you turn up in jeans and T-shirt, as you say, you look really out of place. So you're wearing vintage clothes. We encourage you to shop at charity shops for your outfits. You're digging through your grandparents' wardrobes for stuff. So all of that stuff, make, do, amend, all of those sort of in terms of those vintage ethos is sort of coming through. And with that, we've seen a real positive change in our audience profiling as well, like what they're coming to see, and they're really enjoying the fashion element. That's been a huge thing for us as our audience who maybe were enjoying the nostalgic racing. They're getting ever so older now, and we're needing to attract a new audience, and we're not going to change what our USP is. We're very proud of what we are. So now you might come for the fashion and enjoy that, but then fall in love with the racing, and then that helps us sort of continue that cycle and continue to bring that passion to people who may not have experienced it in the past. So for us, sustainability has been a big thread that flows through the event.
Great. Mandy, I just want to kind of talk to you about, obviously, because you've got an overarching view of multiple events, really, clearly. And each one of those events has their own kind of unique identity, and I suppose kind of creative flavour. So with that kind of helicopter viewpoint, if you like, what are you kind of seeing working really more successfully? Are you seeing any kind of particular focuses on certain ways of bringing things to life, working particularly well with audiences? I'm just wondering whether it might be light trails, or whether you're kind of seeing, okay, there's a real focus on wellness, so we're kind of bringing certain areas to life and focus on kind of that kind of lifestyle living. Just whether there's any kind of particular trends across all those different events.
There's not one answer to that question, because it does depend on the festival. or the event. We do light trails at Christmas, as you said. Our core business is a festival business. I think one of the probably key learnings, which is a point that Stu, kind of coming on from a point that Stu made actually, is around not getting too magpie about technology or creativity and not over-delivering and not over-investing, because you personally feel that would be amazing and that's a personal project that I would like to deliver, and the team get very excited about it. And I think where we think about where perhaps we have made mistakes in the past and learned from those, it does tend to be where we have delivered something that is too thought out. It doesn't sit either aesthetically or sort of operationally or creatively within the full designed environment. It almost, sometimes can stick out like a sore thumb, and that doesn't feel authentic to the audience. So I suppose sort of a learning from that is consider what budgets are available for this broader piece that I talk about with creativity, which is not just things that look nice, that are installed and people can engage with. It's about the overall experience and the audience journey through that experience. And think about what budget you've got available to make that consistent so that story feels authentic right the way through on a camping festival, from gates into campsites into the arenas. So you're not sort of in a kind of war zone campsite and then popping into the arena and having this like amazing bar installation that just doesn't feel authentic to the rest of the show. And what we find is that a consistent spread of creativity, even if the budget's not there to, even if the festival isn't immersive and it doesn't need to be, actually receives probably a warmer welcome from the audience and a better sense of I really hate using the word brand, because festivals aren't brands, but for want of a better phrase, a better sense of what that brand is to the audience than just delivering one big wow moment.
Great, thank you. Luke, obviously, you're co-founder and creative director of Boomtown, and that event's creativity is, I would say, seems absolutely key to its success. It's much loved for the attention to detail that you've spent on bringing it to life every year. So over those years, I mean, what have been the key learnings for you, I guess, really? What's the kind of, for want of a better way of putting it, what's the kind of secret to your success in terms of, of putting all of that energy into it? What do you see has worked really well over the years, and what do you think the key kind of consideration is?
In terms of the creativity, or
I'm thinking about from the perspective of somebody that's kind of set up an event. Say, for example, I'm fairly new to the festival game. I'm in my second year or whatever, and I'm really wanting to be careful with my budget, and I want to bring it to life, but I don't want to just spend money for money's sake or go over the top with. What's kind of core to what do you feel has been behind Boomtown's success on the creative side?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of layers that go into it. We will plan out our story, our kind of main theming, from probably 2 years in advance, so we're really clear and we're really ahead of it. We will then embody that theme as well and make sure we really understand that theme truly before we put it out to the next kind of group. So once we've got clear with that, it then goes into, we call it the Creative Council. So it's the Creative Council that's at the top. That then goes into the next layer of groups of people, and then it works its way down to a group that are maybe working on a window install. So, I mean, I guess the magic and the really kind of the true power of what it is we create is within the collective imagination. It's like there's no way that any one brain could come up with all of these ideas. So we will set the seeds running, we'll spin some plates, and then we'll see how other people spin those plates, and it will work its way down. And I think, we have something like maybe 10,000 people that work on the show, and each one of those has some idea about what that key narrative is for that year. And once you've got such a big group of people that are all holding that theme, that identity, it can then go down into the audience, and then it can really empower the audience to be part of that journey as well. The opening and closing ceremonies have been really powerful, so topping and tailing the festival, a moment when everyone can come together and we can really kind of lay the foundation and say, hey, this is what we're going to go, what the journey is going to be for the weekend, and we take them on. We call it, it's kind of a ceremony really, where we bring them up over the Saturday, bring them back down, and then finish them off with a clear message at the end that they can then take home. You know, I think the ongoing message as well, you know, it's about being really creative and really celebrating the fact we're all together, really leaning into the power of just connection, human connection, and storytelling. You know, everyone is telling a story to the next person, so the thousands of stories that are being created can then manifest outside the festival world as well, you know, and it's amazing hearing people's stories beyond the festival, that they've learned things inside and then they've then taken those on in the outside world. So you get these ripples which are so unique to the festival industry, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the idea of the Creative Council. So essentially ideas are kind of filtered through quite a few different layers before they'll come to life. I'm just in terms of, you know, what you've done for many years is obviously that sort of coupled that sort of physical and digital use of, you know, those reuse and those incredible structures that you build for those different districts. But you obviously, you know, you part of that storytelling, part of that theme that you have is obviously delivered digitally beyond the time frame of the festival itself. When it comes to kind of advances in technology, I mean, for AI, for example, I mean, is that playing a positive part in the way that you'll bring the events to life? Do you have any concerns about sort of the shortcuts that AI offers?
Yeah, I mean, AI definitely isn't my world, really. I don't lean towards it much. But I do really see all the benefits, you know. But it's really difficult when we can spend 2 weeks brainstorming a stage idea and building it out in 3D, and then we could actually stick some prompts into a computer and it can flip that on its head. But I think what AI is really doing to us from a creative collective is it's helping us go deeper inwards into our souls, really. You know, we are able. It's encouraging us, and yeah, it's encouraging us really to think deeper than what we would have normally done before, which was a bit more surface level. So tapping into an emotional piece that possibly AI can't get to at the moment. And I find that really interesting, because if we are delivering our experiences that are tapping into people's deep emotions, they're going to be leaving with a much more powerful experience, basically. They're going to feel it for a long time afterwards. So I think you've got this surface level creativity. It's great for tweaking. It's great for kind of asking questions like it's your mate and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? But the ideas need to come from within. And I think as AI dominates ever more, I think we will go deeper into the soul of it. And that's the heart of the festival as well, the soul of the festival. It's so critically important in this day and age that the soul of a festival remains intact and really clear, and founders of all these events and these experiences are holding really true to that soul level place.
Great.
To add on to that, one of the things that for sure we feel and talk about a lot is it's all well and good spending money on something that's going to look great, but how are people going to feel in that space, and how are you going to bring the energy into that space? Because what people take away more than that moment when they walk into a space and think, wow, that looks good, is the way that space made them feel, the community, the belonging, the sense of soul and emotion. That connection is actually what people take away. And I'm not engaged with AI either, but you know, I have had things spat out from me or briefs from people to say, look, we should build something like this, and I'm like, yeah, that looks good, but how are people going to feel when they're part of it? And it's a big part of what we need to keep hold of, you know, people's thought process in that.
Is it? I mean, it must be a consideration now. You're talking about, you know, living in an experience economy, which is great for our industry and everything else, but also the ability for people to kind of, and the, you know, why we had a panel yesterday on stadium shows, and part of the reason for the success is believed to be the sort of whole need to be together on something that's really Instagrammable, that really is an unmissable event, you know, whether it's a festival or, in this case, a stadium show. It's a big production and everyone wants to. I'm just wondering, when it comes to creativity, well, I guess that's fantastic if people are sharing images of the creativity that's been brought to life in the event environment. But I guess that can backfire to some degree if that's not delivered in the right way. It can have almost a negative effect. So is that a consideration or concern, or am I just being overly kind of negative about it?
I'm not 100% sure what you're getting at, but maybe like threading on from what I just said is that, you know, we can all spend money and take some great photos and assets for Instagram and make the people that weren't there think that it's amazing. But again, sort of as I just said, you do need to engage a community, and you do want them to feel an energy and a connection with what you're doing. So, you know, you're not going to get very far if you are not making sure that, as well as the stuff looking nice, you have got a soul to it. And actually what we find, you know, Boiler Room's part of our group, is that engagement in terms of, I may be misunderstanding where you're getting at here, by the way, but you know, engagement in online content and the longevity of that engagement is better when that content is full of energy and isn't just a flat image of something that looks good. Was that not answering your question?
I was looking at it from the perspective of, you know, if you create something that really works and gels with the audience, then that's going to be shared in a very positive light. If you create something that doesn't feel authentic, perhaps, to an audience, you've got a younger generation, Gen Z, coming in, they're maybe a bit more cynical about certain things. And if, for example, there's a sustainability themed creative kind of activation on site, but they kind of maybe it's not done in a.
I'm following you. Let me tell you something like a kind of story about Boardmasters Festival that I think will answer this question. Boardmasters used to have this area called, I think it might have been called Downtown. Might have got that wrong. Downtown. And no, got it wrong. Anyway, an area of the festival. It was their late night area. They were inspired by Boomtown. They wanted to build this immersive late night area that was full of set and was really wow, but the energy wasn't there. The photographs were great, but the kids went in there at night and they stayed there for 10 minutes and they walked right through it. And I said, after seeing that one year after I joined the business, I said, I know you spent loads of money on this, and I know that it appears a lot in your kind of narrative, but it's not working for the people here, so we need to get rid of it. And we're not going to spend that amount of money again on making the rest of it good, because that's not what people are engaging with. I've walked around and there's this little rave venue here that's a stretch tent and there's hardly any creativity, and we're getting the music right, and that's working. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're just going to do less, and we're going to make sure that we deliver it well and it's curated. And people were very nervous because they thought, well, where are our tools going to be to sell the festival in the future if we take away this stuff that looks great? And, you know, I couldn't really answer it. I just said, I think we'll be all right. And, you know, we're getting into a new shape with that festival as a result by doing a lot less. So maybe that answered your question slightly better than the first time.
I think so, yeah. That's great. I know, Ray, you've got to run off at sort of 12-ish, which is where we're getting to. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions for this panel. We've only got about a few minutes left. We do have to finish on time, unfortunately. But Any questions from the audience? This is your one chance. We've got some great panelists here. Don't be nervous. No? Oh, well, I'm so disappointed. Okay, well, okay, so, I mean, I think really, there's lots of things I could drill into here that will then go into different sort of long-term conversations. We've only got a couple of minutes, but I guess, can I just hear from all of you, what sort of one thing that you kind of, whether it's working with a supplier in a certain way, whether it's a new idea, whether it's a new, different way of working, if there's sort of one thing that's kind of excites you most about these sort of, you know, the creative environments that you're able to build, if there's something kind of facilitating that in a new way, or a new concept, new supplier, new technology. I'll start with you, Sarah, and we'll work around.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Sorry. It's not the easiest question to answer.
No, I think I'm in quite a unique position at Goodwood, and I think sort of touching on what we've been talking about in terms of costs and about how experiences make people feel. I think what excites me is kind of us pushing the boundaries in our area. So you're not necessarily spending loads of money on something, but really, really thinking, to your point, about how that's going to make someone feel. And the best success we have had in recent years are not the most expensive ideas. They are really creative. And I'll give you an example just as a concept. We sort of celebrate various motorsport legends at the event. And one of them, Jim Clark, was a sheep farmer. And we could have just put his cars out on the track and everyone would have thought, wow, that's amazing, because they are, you know, once in a lifetime you're going to see these kind of cars. It doesn't really make you feel anything. And we were like, what can we do to celebrate him? And we sort of came up with this idea of, like, we should get some sheep, because he was primarily a sheep farmer. So why don't we get some sheep and put them on track, and that would be quite fun. And then it was like, well, we shouldn't just get some sheep, we should get like 150 sheep, because that would be like mega. And that's really super creative and weird and witty, and that's going to be memorable. Ultimately, that happened. And inwardly, I was crying inside at the thought of the health and safety and all of the stuff that we had to do behind the scenes. And again, that takes a lot of time. But it was the most memorable part of the event. And, you know, the stuff that was captured on digital and shared really, like, globally afterwards about this moment where sheep went past cars that are worth millions of pounds. I was absolutely terrified one of them was going to jump on a car, and through a band of Scottish, band that were there, and just off on into the distance. It was mental. And those are the moments that people are like, God, do you remember when that crazy thing happened? And that's what excites me, is it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg, but you just got to think differently and think big, and then work out how you're going to deliver it.
Brilliant stuff.
I suppose just continuing on the theme that has been present a little bit is that there's loads of great suppliers out there, there's loads of great kit, there's loads of great tools, but it's more about how you use them. It's more about the curation, the integration, the people power that sits behind them. And, you know, that ecosystem is where the special sauce is. It's not a piece of kit.
Thank you. And Ray?
Well, I have to second that. I think, you know, enjoy the creative process, the interaction, choose the tools wisely, and work towards creating memorable experiences that makes everybody happy, because God knows we need a little bit of happiness in our lives.
Lovely.
Yeah, to finish, I guess, in this world that is becoming increasingly dominated by technology and AI and obliterating everything, it feels like, the critical importance of these IRL experiences, these in real life experiences, continues to be ever more important. And I think as well, just as organisers, you know, making sure that we're really giving time to the artists, you know, on all level, because they have a tough time, you know, and it's easy. We find it's like, well, this person's pretty chaotic and a bit wild, and we can probably get someone that's a bit easier to deal with, and can organise things, but then we lose that kind of rich, raw depth, basically, which needs to continue to flourish and come through. So I guess Yeah, just not always taking the easy route in terms of like streamlining. I think, you know, it's finding that dance in between a really solid operational structure and a wild creative expression, basically. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, well, thank you all for taking part today. Really appreciate it, and thank you for coming.